Op sociale mediaplatforms vandaag de dag gaat kwaliteitsinhoud vaak onopgemerkt voorbij. Op Den krijgen gebruikers betaald voor het maken, evalueren en beheren van kwaliteitsinhoud. Contentmakers worden beloond op basis van de betrokkenheid en het bereik van hun bericht of opmerking. Contentbeoordelaars worden beloond op basis van de snelheid en resultaten van hun voorspellingen over welke content trending zal zijn of viraal zal gaan. Eigenaren van communities worden beloond op basis van betrokkenheid binnen een community. Kwaliteitsinhoud loont op Den.
Hey, what's up, denizens? And thanks again for joining us for the weekly Den Governance Call. I am Dave. We're here with Joe Dragon, and Zeeth is joining us, it looks like, too. Good
Yes. Hello.
Well,
how's it going,
afternoon
Dave?
yet? Yeah, it's noon there, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right on. So happy day.
Passed. Very good.
Zeeth, are you in? What's your microphone doing over there? Just wanted to see
I
if it
think he was
working.
there if we needed him. I think
Okay, word. Sounds good. So, right. So, anybody else who wants to hop in, and if you have anything that you specifically want to discuss, there's a link that can be found on the agenda over in the governance layer, and then drop a line into private chat so we know what you want to discuss, and we'll find a good time to bring you up and talk about it.
Cool.
All right. So
Let's get started.
What
I'm
we got?
pinging him to see if he had anything to bring in. So.
Okay, yeah,
know.
ping him on that, and we'll see. And I, more and more, I've been kind of thinking that this is time we should use anyway for like we need time to talk about this stuff anyway. So I'm liking these. Like, we should brainstorm a little bit today. I think there's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, we've been working on the site-wide stuff, and that's coming to fruition, for
Right.
example, right?
Right. We have a
and
review of the like the first set of what it would look like for votes on behavior and votes on the liquidity that's there and everything else. So reviewing that hopefully right after the show, and then we will. I guess we've even seen the front end, so we've at least seen the first pass of the interface for people to vote. So it's going to be.
Yeah, I sneaked a little screenshot in the last call just to
Nice.
look at and show off. Maybe I was going to show it off on coffee, but got sidetracked with the demos. So it
That's
looks
awesome.
good though. It looks it's cool. And you know what? Speaking of interface, I relearn stuff about Den all the time, because I'll learn stuff and then I won't use something for a while, and I'll go back and use it again and be like, oh, that's how that works. So a question came up about how advertising works, external boosts, and how often it updates when people click in and stuff. And so I was under the impression that that was just tallied every day and your charts updated. But no, we used it live on the show, and it just updates in real time as people are clicking on it for your external boost. So it's kind of cool. You can see the data. You don't know who it is. I don't really care, but you can see the different. And this is governance going to be kind of the same way, I think, because that's how the GI is for layers.
Yeah, I mean, like the creation of a governance issue for site-wide is going to be very similar to what is now the miscellaneous GI in a layer. Whereas, okay, you have up to 13 options, and you can ask any question you want, and it's pretty much only the owners can vote. And then, certain things like configuration will be tied directly to immediately execute. But some of these will be, okay, of these 10 features, what should we prioritize? What should we budget to build first? And that's going to be
which is probably going to be our first big thing, right? Because that's, you and I have talked about this too a bunch of times, where it's like, there's tons of stuff that we know we want to do, and that we know is coming down the road. And it's this is the thing, and I think I said the same thing earlier. Getting this done now allows us to do so much more, make decisions efficiently with everyone. Not even a lot holder. That still blows my mind. It's like, without even having to have a lot token, for governance, which is how everything's built. You got to have a certain token. You got to have a very manual process.
Right.
This whole that's cool. It's just neat. I don't know.
Yeah,
Sometimes I
I
get
think
really excited about it.
the fact that it's there is a token on the site wide anyway. Like say in Layer, it's all token governance.
Yes, I'm discussing site-wide.
Yeah, site wide. It's interesting because we're going to have the lot tokens from the founders, right? That'll be in the Layer itself. We'll have LP tokens from liquidity that have that effect, and then we'll have the behavior component of the two community votes. And it's going to be interesting because, in my opinion, I think that's the thing that's been missing when somebody says, "Oh, but what about whales?" and what about other, But because we already have talked a lot about the fact that this is something that, if you had a neighborhood organization where you aren't going to have crypto people, it's very simple for them. They don't have to understand crypto to use this, and that's powerful. But then when you add in the fact that even in a case where you might have crypto and you might have whales, that behavior component, in my opinion, is kind of like the evolutionary change from what was a city-state democracy to a republic to now here's a behavior approach where a citizen, or in this case a denizen, that is engaging with the system more is going to have more weight.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting with what I'm doing too, which is a kind of a microcosm, these social experiments. And like I'll have some interesting reports next week, I guess, to see how that went. But I've got I don't know, I've got a lot of momentum going here in Gainesville that came from the realization of, okay, I once was an event planner, and then I turned into a kind of an evangelist for blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. And then I realized, like, that's just me, and that's because I like it, and everyone's not going to think of it the same way. So I turned that off and was like, okay, what I really got to do is think of this from a business perspective. And the way that I need to present this is like, okay, I'm doing all the complicated stuff, and I know how to use the Den tools. And then anybody can come into these local, it could be a neighborhood thing or a women's club, or we're just doing a local concert series, that anybody can be a part of. And so now anybody can come in and, like, they don't have to know they're in a DAO or earning cryptocurrency. It doesn't matter. It's just the way that it's just the tools that I use to make the process more efficient for my business. And so when I started thinking of it that way, it's like, oh, people will love this if they don't know it's new, like weird technology, because it's not, that
Right.
aversion to change kind of thing. So,
Right.
yeah, anything on that local note that we could talk about? Any tips for me? How do you think this will be? Yeah, I mean, like, because I think about messaging too. How should this be? It's very much a have the Den app to get in free, so everyone's gonna look at it like the official. Oh, it's Dave's Den thing, even though it's not all of Den. It's just one little thing. Locally, people are gonna see it like, oh, it's Dave's Den thing. So,
I don't
what's
know.
the
I mean,
approach to that, you think? I mean,
don't
I
be.
have what I'm gonna do. I just wanted to know if you had any
Yeah,
thoughts.
I mean, just make sure you aren't afraid to do something that's not automated. And I know you're already
Hmm.
doing that. You're already saying, look, I can connect this and this, and the closer we can get it, the better. Like say, if we can get that scannable QR code out sooner rather than later, even if it's for the next month,
Right,
it'd be
right.
great, right? Because then I'm thinking, okay, the band can project it behind them. They could put it, that you could put it on the poster. You could do all different types of things to tip people. Theoretically, you could require a tip to make a request. Stuff like that could be interesting. I don't know, but
I'm definitely doing that. So that's what I'm doing. And I think that's going to end up giving us some, like, here's what we need. Here's what needs to work better. That's what it's done before, right? And so that's something that I think the QR, have we talked much about how the QR thing is going to look and what it, like the features of sort of semi-invoicing or pre-filled forms, that kind of thing?
I
Or
don't
do
know
you
if we've
even want
talked
to get
about it
into that?
live. I know if we've talked about it at decent length internally, but yeah, I don't think we have
Okay, I
live.
won't throw that in right now, but because I know we had other stuff to talk about, but that's something we can bring into these governance calls too. I think is
Yeah.
some of the stuff that we talk about offline. Once we're pretty sure that's at least going to be the first version of something we roll out until everybody can tell us how it should be different and make it better.
Right.
I think it would be useful for everybody if, like, stuff that we know is coming, we could hash it out here. And it'll save us time too on the back end of not having to schedule time separately because we'll figure that out publicly,
Right.
If it's something that can be done that way.
Right. Right.
So
And
I
I
just
think
wanted to propose that, I guess.
some of the stuff to think about too with DenGov is that could be confusing as we move forward. And we've seen a little bit like say with World Blockchain Roundtable, where we started by saying, look, here are some options for the next month's shows. Tell us, in the governance, which shows we should have next month. And then we just added the ability for people to now propose them in front of that. So it's not even us just nominating a bunch of, now it's anybody can bring a topic in and it can make it through the process, but it made it harder to describe because, people just realized how we were doing it the first month. And then the second month we added another element. So some of the stuff that I'm expecting to see site-wide will kind of be like that, where, I already have a note made up that I'm going to run by a bunch of YouTube, but it would be on here are what I see as the most notable features that we should prioritize. Which of these things should we get built? All the way from chat and DM to anonymous posting. And some of which will be simpler and some of which will be more work, right? And so I'm still trying to figure out the format, but in the very least, I want to get that out as one of the very first things that I would put up for governance vote. But in the end, it would likely be that we would get estimates for every one of them, kind of declare that as, this was going to take us, let's say, a month and a half to build.
Informed
this is going to be something that's like, maybe this takes us less than 2 weeks, right? And so people can kind of weigh that and say, you know what? I'd rather have number one, but number two is going to be here in 2 weeks. Let's just do number two. So I'm going to vote on that. And then, and that's how the, budget and the schedule will be kind of laid out. But then on the other side, it would be, okay, now we have this here, but there are some design decisions we have to make. So we can either have pseudocode or maybe even the code that would be then approved by site-wide governance before it's rolled out. I mean, that's really what I want to see, right?
I'm glad you said that about this is like maybe the previous thing you were saying, but with World Blockchain, the way that you introduce features and they introduce more features, and then maybe that's confusing because you didn't quite get the first one or you just grasped the first one.
Yeah.
Y'all Weird brought up a similar thing this week. We were talking about that as far as how much is too much information overload, that kind of thing, where people will turn off. And, I consider that kind of a governance or a layer ownership thing too, which is like, okay, if you're trying to paint a picture to somebody, it's like maybe, so the result of that is we are actually slowing down some of the plans we had. We were going to run in all at once and be like, all right, we're going to do this. Everybody that comes in gets a lot. Everybody that has a lot can vote on the next band. You guys get to own it and figure out who comes. And we're like, you know what? That's a great idea. But why don't we do the first 4 months, the first 4 shows, all pre-planned, and then you can start walking one feature in at a time.
That's good. That's smart. The other thing you can do that I think is really important, that it took us a little bit to get there, and luckily we kind of came up with it before we launched everything. But and that is on let's say on World Blockchain Roundtable, that we started effectively with no lot, right? And we had a couple so we can manage it, right? But then every show, we started to, we started looking, what is the thing that would determine the amount of lot that should be created based upon that show, so that the participants in that show producing it, both providing topics, voting topics, and then hosting it, would be rewarded with. And the reason it was important is because but prior to that, we had, we thought, okay, we'll start with 100,000 and then we'll break it down. But then the problem is the ownership is so small for the initial, whereas if you start with 0, you have a significant portion after the very first event, whatever it is. And then, but the question is, how do you measure it? And, with the roundtable show, we decided to measure on views and round it down just to keep it a flat, so that you pretty much have to get the most significant digit of the view count to move up before it moves at all. But because they're split up, it meant that anybody at any point in the future still has the incentive to drive more views and to be on the show. So, and you don't have the whale effect, whereas like, oh, I haven't been on the first 30 shows. Would it even be worth it for me to start? And it is, because that viewership. So
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that a lot, because that's how I did with my business layer with Gainesville. Is I just minted 100,000 as an arbitrary number,
yeah,
and then, you know what? I got to mint some more internal before Saturday. I'm glad I just thought about that, because I got to be able to tip people, because you can't do that with external over on Ethereum.
yeah,
But since it is a business layer, so I can do that. I just
yeah,
reminded myself that. So I like that, because, like you said, if you started with 100,000, you get a 100,000th
yeah,
vote kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Something about, like, we have conversations about whales and stuff too. It's a fun word. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is, coming from Bitcoin, it's all about deflationary stuff and scarcity and max number of tokens or whatever. And the model of diluting whales if they stop participating is pretty cool, because you can have the whales in the beginning. You can have the people that want to. You have to incentivize it somehow, right? You have to incentivize getting people, please come work on this with me, and so you get some rewards for it, right? And later on, as that project scales up, the problem is that people that didn't get in so early, the rewards are diminished
yes,
compared to, because the network effect of now you're splitting it among thousands of people instead of 10. But then if, like, one of those 10 people decides to go on vacation for 4 years, like, if you're required to continue showing up to get a
yeah,
new lot, then you're minting new lot every time, then you're diluting whales who stop participating, which
yep.
I think could be a useful feature. And it's something that I would have typically been like, no, that's bad, just because inflation is bad. But it's actually useful in this case, I think,
Hmm.
or it can
Yeah,
be.
hmm, yeah. I don't know. It's it's still early, but it's really good. There are a couple of other models too that require staking and burning that you can do as well. That might be interesting. Where if you don't come in and participate, you actually lose a piece,
Mm,
and it's an accelerating
yeah,
loss on a Fibonacci. I wanted to add that
I
as
see what you're saying.
inside of Dragons, but because we chose ERC20, it wasn't a really workable thing, especially then. But I still want to build something that does that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because then it gives you that parabola, that curve instead of a linear.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Where
you
it's
don't
like, oh,
have.
I'm sick, so if I missed 3 weeks, it wouldn't really matter. But if I sit out for months, then it's just pretty much gone, right?
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Cool.
you know. Anyway, cool.
All right,
What?
so V3 is complete. We're over there. There's probably still some left over on V2. So if you do try to trade on V2, it will let you, but that is not the one that we're using. That's not the one that we're counting for the site-wide governance that we were just talking about, the different LP voting weight pools. So use V3. Are the links updated on the front end on the website yet? Or do they still say V2? I don't think they are on the website
I
yet, right?
believe they are not. I can look
Okay,
real quick.
we're getting there. We BitBuy opened up the Telegram pinned
Oh,
uh, message
it,
and changed it in there.
it
So did you
looks
just try
like
it?
they are. I think they are pointing to
Cool.
V3. Yep.
All right.
So in the wallet at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the buy button next to the token take you to V3. It looks like awesome.
Yep.
And a reminder with that, if you're somebody who thinks you're going to be putting in liquidity to what do you call that? Liquidity mining for, well, putting in liquidity LP.
Oh, for the
We're
the
using the
lower
one
reward side.
percent tier,
Yeah.
fee tier,
Oh.
and that's
Yes.
the only
Okay.
one that counts over on DIN. But that should be more incentive for people to want to go add liquidity anyway, because you get more
Yeah.
fees.
And if for any reason somebody didn't, we don't have anything formal yet, but if you didn't want to do the 1% and you wanted to create a liquidity pool in one of the other at one of the other levels tiers, um, just let us know, and we believe we'll be able to just add that. So, but it's not
We're
something that we can automate, because without the contract there, we can't really code to it yet. So,
But that's
or
looking like
without-
it's on track, right? So we're still on
Yeah.
track to end of February. Looks like we'll have at least into beta for, rolling out, that kind of thing.
I think so, because we on the dev side, we did the integration just this past week of the V3 liquidity for the purposes of the site-wide governance. And because that's there, though, it's going to be the same snapshots that will be used for the lore rewards system, the behavior rewards over there on the the farming, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So
Word. So I want to get to our next sections about downvotes and stuff and brainstorming some options for improving that. Before we hop over there, there were a quick couple of questions in chat. Hyperion Frequency asks, what happens to tokens that sit on the platform? Like if someone dies or something? I assume they're just there forever, as long as we're around, right? Like if they haven't exported them to Ethereum, for example. We don't have any timeout or anything. And a follow-on question is, maybe that's an interesting way to, if we need to incentivize activity and accounts not loitering, maybe there could be a tax if you leave it unattended for a period of time.
that's a good idea.
I don't have an immediate opinion, but I'm not against it either. So
I mean, it would have to be for governance, but I would, and I don't know that I would vote which way I would vote on it, but it would be really interesting. Some people may hate it, but it might be something that maybe let's say in order to participate in one of these, like the lore behavior rewards program, that you would have to turn that on or something, but it would effectively eat away at your matter if you, or your lore, or both, if you didn't continually remain active.
it could be
Might be too much.
a less penalizing version of that would be to use energy, to where your energy could be like, whatever your matter plus 24 times your activity multiplier or something like that. So that, like, if you come in after a long spell, maybe you used to have a bunch of energy every day, but it's going to take you a week or two of activity to get back
not
up to
bad.
be able to use all of that energy you used to have, that kind of deal.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
not bad.
there might be something there if we creates a healthy cycle.
Yeah. Well, I will say the reason that I'm even interested in it is it was solving for dragons. It was solving to a problem, and we didn't implement this, like I said, because Ethereum made it too difficult to even consider. Is that, let's say you have a token supply. Let's say you have 100,000 of some token X. The fact that holding token X would require you to participate, right? That if you didn't, it was fine. But again, you would have that Fibonacci where on day one, you might lose one token, or a very, very small percentage of your tokens. Day two, a little bit more. And then on a Fibonacci scale, after so many cycles, depending upon what you want to do with that curve, your tokens are gone. And why? Why does this matter? It isn't because, I'm holding, I'm not doing something, I should be penalized. It is more that the question with, like, say, every other cryptocurrency, which is how much of it is in the landfill? How much of the Bitcoin supply, we know how much hasn't moved. How much is actually unmovable because it's lost. And the beauty of this, it was considered a constant supply mechanism. I was going to call it ghost dragons or something, where the dragons would be here, and the ghost dragons would only come to the people who were staking either dragons or ghost dragons. And after a time, once all the ghost dragons came back through, you wouldn't be able to stake dragons anymore or something else. But either way, if I threw all of my ghost dragons in the pool, they're gone forever. That within, like, say, 43 weeks or something, depending on the index, that everybody else participating in the system would effectively be grabbing them. And so the cost of participating would be regulated based upon how much people are losing. So if there's not a lot to be that there are no big wallets that have been apparently thrown in a lake, then I might not come in, because it's like I'm okay losing a couple, but I'll only come in like once a month or once every 8 weeks, so I don't lose too many, and then I gain what I lost back when I come back in, and it would regulate itself.
That's
Kind of
wild
cool.
because it makes me cringe a little bit at first because I'm like, oh my gosh, like what if I am in a coma for 2 years, And
Yeah.
do I need to do I need to have like a power of
Oh,
attorney to go like make my keys hot every
that
3 or 4
question.
days?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, we're getting way off subject here, but
Yeah.
that question was answered by saying effectively make a financial instrument then, because I can come in and for a smaller loss over that 3 years, I could come in and sign a document that says, look, I'm not going to come back and stake for this many, whatever period. And you can project different things. I don't know. There's a bunch of neat stuff. You'd end up being able to speculate, and I'm not a financial guy, but you'd be able to do financial things related to use instead of price, right? Are more people going to be doing something with the token versus not,
This
rather
is
than,
this is
yeah.
extremely off topic, but think about if there was a dead man switch tied to that mechanism, and the people who did not want that
Yes.
information released would have to actively participate in keeping that account alive, or it would distribute a dead man's.
There you
The
go.
switch would activate and it
Yeah.
releases whatever
That's
the
awesome
Kraken or
because you
something.
would
That
you would
would be interesting.
incentivize
Yeah,
the flip, because then everybody is like, if it's Assange or something, you would be able to maybe participate in the other side and say, no, we want that to open. I don't
yeah,
know. It'd
yeah.
be interesting. Anyway,
It came up, so I figured I'd throw it out there.
yes. Very good. Okay, what
Awesome.
was the next
So,
thing?
well, we wanted to talk about. So there's conversation about downvotes. There's we put a spot on the agenda to have some discussion about that. So I wanted to
Yeah,
make sure we get to that. And so now's a pretty good time for that, I think.
correct.
Hype Freak. Let's see. There's a few questions in here. I'm not sure if we'll get to them all right now, but let's discuss this for a minute and see if we have a minute to go back over through them again. Thanks for the
Okay.
input.
Okay. So the first bit on downvoting is right now it's not exposed, so nobody knows who is downvoting something. And I think a lot of times, at least in my opinion, from all the patterns we've seen, that people do get do take it personal, right? If you see a certain number of downvotes in the metrics, it can make you not happy, right? So, sometimes they project that to, sometimes it has in the past. There have been people who have downvoted for emotional reasons because they don't like it. It's a character thing instead of content related. So there is that. Yet, overall, they effectively are. It's disincentivized to do that. It doesn't mean it won't happen, um, but there are a bunch of different options, and there have been a bunch of people who have actually denizens who have provided some really good proposal, or at least portions of, you do this and this and this, and so there are a lot of different things. Now we we discussed a lot of this way back, and the first step that we had, that was we had, I think, maybe five different components that we could build. And we estimated all of them, and we looked at which would have the most effect, in changing the way. Because gosh, it was probably 8 months ago, something like that. We had people who were actively downvoted with heavy energy because people didn't like each other or something else, right? And we realized, it's like, oh, we hadn't even thought about it, that the information market, because it was tracking the positive and negative, meant that if you shifted into the negative, you would get zero, even if 90% of the layer loved that content.
Hmm.
And we realized that's totally wrong,
So
right?
yeah, it was affecting payouts
Right.
with one person's,
Yeah. And
no.
that one person, the thing that was originally built is that one person was effectively throwing away that energy, right? Um,
It was probably worth it for
but
them to do it. That was
yeah,
the way that they used Din, and that was what
yeah,
their energy was used for, was to give them that feeling of I just damaged you,
yeah,
So we're
yeah,
like, okay, maybe that's
yeah,
not how we meant it.
yeah. And so the things we changed, which fit into the model pretty well to fix that, were that we tracked for one thing, it helped with the emotional side of seeing negative votes on your content, right? Or seeing a negative overall energy, that it effective, and it also helped you measure more how much energy is put into this, without knowing how much was up and how much was down and everything else. So that helped, and that worked right away. Where I just see there's 10,000. It could be a lot of a negative. Who knows?
Yeah, you can see that there's been people that have been engaging in that or weighing in heavily. You just don't get that initial, like,
Right.
you don't subconsciously get told, here's how you should feel about it.
Yeah, and there is
This
some
way.
misunderstanding on some of that too, where some people think, why is this person getting so much upvotes? That's crap content, and we're like, it could be negative. You can't assume that it's positive, even though it's a high number. And the other bit of it that was the most important piece was that that absolute value of the energy that goes into that market is the amount which is compared with all the other. That's how you compete with the other content. How big is that market? So that effectively, if you have a 90% up vote consensus, that is, 90% of everybody said this is good content. No matter how much energy they put in, they said this is good content. That the one person who puts 20,000 energy down, even though everybody else put in 5 energy up, means that person's market is going to be very large, and yet the 90% says it's positive, and you end up with a very clean way to reward that person, even though somebody thinks they're attacking them.
And so the negative energy applied would end up benefiting that creator if the 90% was like. So what you're deciding then is not how much of this energy we should apply, it's how should we apply this. So here's the energy we got, and so now your votes are how should we apply the energy that's in this bucket.
Right, and we have 3 parts. We have a quorum, which later will be tuned to the size of the layer. But right now, there's a static. It's in the white paper that 13 votes either way gets you full consensus and full credit. If you get 2 votes only, then it's on a curve, so you get a smaller amount no matter how much energy goes in. So if you vote 10,000 energy and you're the only person that votes on it, it's mostly wasted. That no one else really thought it was worth any energy, just saying yes, this is great.
But what that should do is put it up for visibility so that other people will more likely see it, right? That does affect the placement in the feed.
Mm-hmm.
So
and then so quorum is that, then consensus itself, which is literally just the up and down, and then the energy amount, right? So and the energy amount is it affects you as an evaluator, how early and how much energy you put in. If you predicted correctly what the rest of the layer wants, that's the only way you get rewarded for the eval. And then because that's how you're rewarded for the eval, it's an objective measure to compare that piece of content against all the content in the layer and all the content across the entire site. So it's a really interesting thing because we're using prediction markets to both reward and incentivize, incentivize and reward, and then to judge the content. So it's clean. Now the things we didn't get to add that are there's one more piece we did add, which was the Fibonacci scale, which we always had a Fibonacci scale, but you could vote, I'm going to vote 3, then I'm going to vote 987, then I'm going to vote, so I could get exactly 1,000. We took that away to force it that the Fibonacci scale is, and if anybody doesn't know where it came from Fibonacci, who was trying to describe rabbits mating, and something that it led to this scale that was unique in the way it's generated, and it's very organic, and it's tied to a bunch of things because of the fundamentals. And I'm not a mathematician, so I couldn't describe you how in the world that could be, but it's an organic scale that grows, and it grows the further you go in the index, the bigger the gaps are. But it's a very clean organic curve, which means that if I'm judging something, I can say, 144 it needs a little more than 144, 233, maybe a little more than that. It's like not 377. No, I'm going to keep it at So it's that type of thing, and so that's in place now. And then you only have a 1 hour window. So after you place your initial response, you only have an hour to adjust it. If you like say, okay, I read through the whole article, or maybe I read the article, I voted, and then I read some comments, and then some other things come up. It's like, oh, you know what? This is actually better than I even thought. I'm going to add more to it. And so that's there now. And I think that's really effective because it keeps people from late after the fact adjusting their vote just to be to go along with the crowd. It forces
Right,
you
because
to
that would
make
have
your
defeated
yeah.
the purpose of not showing, well, part of the purpose of not showing the positive negative in the beginning anyway. Quick sidebar on that, because I thought of something. I want to see how you feel about it. You know how there's a difference of opinion on whether or not, like in the app, when you are scrolling through your home feed to vote, you have to go in, and because you're evaluating, right? So you can't evaluate it before you're able to see it. So you go in and you evaluate it. What if you could? But there's also what we just talked about, the prediction market and the wager versus the how should we use this energy, up or down? Is this up or down? What if you could use only the toggle up and down to do your
That's a
one
good idea.
energy without actually having to open the entire thing up? But if it was something that you did want to like wager on, then you could go in and you could
It's not
only
a bad
use the
idea.
slider inside of it.
Yeah.
I just thought of that yesterday, and it could be a good if it
And it's
continues, if the conversation comes back up
yeah.
and we need to address that again, maybe we can talk about that as an option.
And it is different on mobile too. I think you can actually vote without opening it up. So no, but there's one more piece that we haven't done, which comes to the transparency side of things that we want to do, but we want it to be very conservative as we talk, especially with the governance, to make sure everybody agrees before we do any of these things. And the first is to show the full consensus either in the metrics page or, in my opinion, more appropriately in the content itself. That I couldn't look at it, and basically because of the way that the eval works, that we can't give you any information at the beginning because we want to know your real prediction without looking at what everybody else has voted. That what we want to do is say it's all hidden for either 8 or 12 hours, right? But once the post is that old, then your eval vote is not going to reward you much unless you put in radically high multiple of whatever the current energy is. So even if it hadn't been voted up, it would work very naturally, because even if it hasn't been voted up but it's 12 hours old, it's like, okay, I can now put in a bunch, but that's way after the fact, and it's the people who only put in 5 energy or something have multiples better, even if you put in 5,000 at that point, that it doesn't matter as much if we show here's the full consensus. And so basically after the post is a certain period or certain age, you would be able to see the whole thing, so people would have a little better visibility. It's like, oh, I voted on that and I did great. I guessed it right again, right? And that's the game. And then
Because it
the other
is
side
a skill
is
that you
whether
learn. You get better at it.
yes, yeah, and the other side is to know for some of the things that have been going on on the drama side of the House lately, potentially to let people see who voted up or down. Now, that might be controversial because people might not vote down if they know that people are going to see they voted down. But then again, you have to think about it. Maybe if it's for a legitimate reason, it's like, and people could come as like, why'd you vote down? It's like, because that was lazy or was in the wrong layer, So
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's interesting, because I don't know either if it's because some people are going to be afraid to vote against the crowd, and sometimes that's going to end up being good for them, and sometimes that's going to end up being bad for them. I guess it's a
Yeah,
human problem. I don't know,
yeah,
but
yeah.
that's the whole
That's
thing
something we
is
need
that,
to.
isn't it?
Yeah, we need to talk about it, and that's just one of the other solutions. So, and then what was it, Hyperion that
Yeah, hype freak.
yeah, that put up a couple of options, and I think some of them are
Yes,
workable,
it
but
looked
there's
like it.
some good. Sorry.
Yeah, and it what from and maybe I only read 80% of it because I was in a hurry. But it seems like it's like a suggestion for having like diminishing visibility per user whenever you, like if you downvote one person's post a few times in a row, you just naturally stops being shown that much of, maybe not all of it at first, but over time, like you see less and less of them.
Yeah.
Um,
And my biggest
as a
gripe
way
about that
to,
would be
okay.
the scalability of it. That's just one more element that when we're trying to get an efficient feed out, that we'd have to have calculated. Whereas if you can tie it to something more static, which would be
There it is.
the vote reputation, it would be somewhat similar. And
And I apologize for glossing over it.
yeah.
I just was unprepared with it.
That's cool. So anyway, we basically just need to keep having the discussion and figure it out, but don't assume that it's a brigaded downvote. I'm sure it has happened. I'm sure it does happen, but um, there will be inefficiencies in the system. We just have to find where those value leaks might be and adjust them. And I would, in all truth, rather than changing a feed, I would prefer if anybody can come up with a directly measurable approach to finding a brigaded downvotes, as an example. That's the solution we need, because if you can measure and say, even if there's some gray area that you have a 5% match that you brigade because you downvoted this along with a bunch of other people, versus something that's maybe higher up, it's over 50% likely that this is a brigaded thing because your team is always downvoting that particular account. That in some cases that's legitimate though. So how do you in an
We
objective
could
way?
potentially use some of our existing abuse systems that are designed for like getting
Yeah.
rewarded in a way that you don't deserve to, in that fashion, but on the
Right.
opposite
Right.
trend.
Right. I mean, it could potentially affect your the reputation right now does not affect the rewards algorithm at all. If we plugged it into the rewards algorithm, it could, let's say you have a really bad reputation in one area that could affect your ability to be rewarded elsewhere. So,
And that
I
would
don't
be
know.
like a per layer setting that would almost allow you to pay for a quality. It's like a almost like I'm imagining oracles, blockchain oracles, to be able to pay for like a quality evaluator objectively. You'd
Mhm.
say, okay, if you have this reputation in this layer, we actually, compensate you more or less if you have a poor. Yeah, it's weird because so many things are options.
Mhm.
It's hard to say, what I guess my opinion overall is that iteration is really important. If we have something that's like mostly working, but there's definitely improvements that could be made,
Oh, there's
I don't
another
want to
one.
try a different system. I want to iterate on that. And
Exactly.
but
We need to iterate on what we have
yeah,
because like say doing a reputation thing is radically simpler than adding a full new infrastructure or something
and then
else.
reputation to votes too. We've talked about, which is maybe the conversation we should be having. I don't
There's
know.
the other thing too. What if you downvote consistently in one account, especially, and maybe it doesn't count if the consensus is this is bad. So if the consensus is this is good and you're consistently downvoting it, and you do not block that account, that maybe you can't vote on that account at all.
Oh yeah, because
That's
naturally
not
you
bad.
would want to just after a while, if you kept seeing it, you would think that the person would just stop wanting to see it and block that
Yeah,
person, right?
yeah, yeah. And
What
that's
if
something.
you what if you didn't rely on a person to act in that way, but instead implemented, like if you get downvoted by the same person, pick a number, a high number, 100 times in a row, then you automatically that person has blocked you now. Like
Mhm.
without the person having to say block, what if the system blocks somebody for you because you've downloaded that person every time you've interacted with them? You obviously don't want to see them. Let's
Yeah,
get rid of that for you, so you're not going to vote on them anymore.
yeah.
That
That would
could
be,
be
yeah.
something.
And auto blocking even, yeah, that wouldn't be bad. Anyway, there's something there. There are a few different angles, but it has to be an objective measure. So
That's an interesting idea, yeah. Because would that lead to, like, let's say there's a downvote brigade, and they're haters on certain people, right? If people have the inability to like unsub themselves, is that a feature then of the platform that could be useful and unique and helpful to everyone? Because I kind of actually like that idea of auto block after, like, if you just, because that's also like just keep, it's just helping, it's maintenance and kind of cleaning up a little bit too,
Hmm.
because you're evaluating, saying consistently, this person doesn't know how to, like, this is a bot, this is spam,
Yeah.
this is what you're saying, it's off topic. So I like the idea.
Cool. Yeah, there's something there, and yet you will have to be in priorities. I really want an anonymous posting
Yeah.
capability or reply. I
100
really
is a lot
want
to wait. I picked that number just for sake of argument. Like, it didn't matter, just a number is like, for
yeah,
argument's sake. More likely it would be like 13 or something, or
yeah,
4,
yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever, or per
yeah.
layer threshold.
Yeah, we did have something that we haven't had time to do it because we don't have some of the layer metrics built in already with snapshots and stuff. But like say, uh, I do believe that from all of our Telegram groups that we saw generally an 8 to 10% ban rate on the current subscribed user base, and it's even tighter if you can combine that with an active user metric. But that the design in the white paper is that the block threshold for auto ban would, and it would be something similar here, would adjust based upon the size of the layer, right? So because it's hard right now sometimes to know. It's like if the layer is small, maybe the default number is too low or too high. I mean, so anyway.
Let me hold on a second. I just lost my screen share, so let me bring it back up.
Yeah, but
It's
once we get
called,
site-wide governance in, I want to get feedback on the priorities, because like I said, I think there are a couple of there are a couple of features that we need to get built out that won't be that bad, and there are a couple more that might take a little bit of work. So
all right. There's some useful stuff that came out of that. That was good.
yeah, yeah,
All right, what do we got? So we know that current situation is live. I've been using that a little bit. There's been some tags added to that, which is cool.
yes,
I threw up a post and said, hey, what tags do we need? And some people suggested things. And next thing I know, some people started adding those and voting on them, and it just kind of started happening. So that's cool. That was a decent launch. We got to decorate it still, but that'll come.
Do you have any ideas on experimentation? One thing I would like to see, Pete, we just did the positive where VKB had he had been posting for a proposed LCP layer in maybe places that people didn't like it being posted, right?
Right. He didn't realize that there was a reputation system.
Yeah,
And so by the time he realized that, he had been blocked basically everywhere. So that
yeah,
was the issue there.
yeah. Now, do you know if he was auto banned from blocking, or was he banned from because downvotes on his content
That is
reputation?
unclear to me. I'm not entirely
Okay,
sure.
so we find that out. But either way, so I went through and I put into proposals to open up to whitelist him to be able to post again to those layers.
Hmm.
I have to actually ask something of the devs to know. Does that mean he's fully whitelisted forever? Does that mean maybe we whitelist him until his
Right.
reputation comes back? That's what I don't know yet.
Yeah,
Um,
there could be like an oopsie reset feature that expires after you've been on the platform for a month, that you can't, like a one-time
yeah,
freebie.
yeah,
But
but
I
it's
don't think it would be permanent, obviously.
yeah,
I think it would be at the most a resetting to, like, and not even good rep either, just resetting
yeah,
to
and
baseline.
I think right now it is permanent. That and you could effectively, if you know you have a party and maybe you have a new layer and small user base at the start, that you could go into the settings for that layer and find that user and literally say, okay, I'm going to let you reply and I'm going to let you vote, but I'm not going to let you post, right? And it would go to layer governance, and that's already there, and it's interesting. So some of the things are already there that a lot of people don't know sometimes. So,
Along with like governance posts that explain what governance items are for, or GIs that automatically create a post. A good point is that if someone is banned, something that we haven't fleshed out as much is the unbanning situation.
Yeah.
So maybe it could be like a notice or something in that layer saying, here's the accounts this week that have been banned if you disagree with any of them or whatever. Or if you
Yeah.
want, I think probably it's an appeal process and then it's up for a vote. Right now it's more manual, but
Mhm.
with more tools comes more like automated fairness,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think.
Yep. But like say in this case, it made sense because he appealed to I think didn't support, and so I just put it up. Like I didn't have enough votes to pass it by myself anyway, so it was great. So I could just say, okay, I'll put this up for vote, and I know one of them already passed, and I think maybe the other one has now too. But just to let him post again. But
Something else that we can get some more clarity on right now, I think we were talking about limiting the ability to make a layer that was a runner-up winner that didn't win an LCP to like the rest of that week and into the weekend, and maybe like the following Monday might be you need to have let us know before then so we can get it
yeah,
going.
yeah,
The verbiage on here is by February 1st to get it in.
yeah.
So do we want to
Well, we could let him do it by February 1st, and then they doesn't mean we have to create it until the next batch is created.
Okay. Yeah,
That
because
could
that's
be,
the
but
issue is like there's a certain cadence and then it
yeah,
kind of needs to be in this process
but
at this time.
I would prefer it, like say in the future, it would be, in my opinion, they would be nicer if it was that first weekend. It's like, okay, we didn't win, but we came in third. I'm going to put in the matter, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I would be for that just to kind of like get on with it, that kind of thing.
Simple, yeah. And that way, it's
Uh,
just if it doesn't, then you have to wait. You have to wait till next month. It's all
and
fine.
while we're on that, I made a mistake and put out wrong information last week. We're not creating three layers next month. We're just doing two again, right? Is that true?
I can't remember what's posted. I'd have to ask what's up there, but I I want, and I think we were waiting for site wide, and we've had a couple of delays getting it out, but I want to see at least a 2-in-1 where we do the top two by unique and the one by lore, because right now they're almost always, just because the gaming mechanics, they're always going to merge to be the same one, because people realize, oh, that one's going to win. I need to move my lore there, just so I can get some of that lot. You do have some people that commit to the various layers, but proposals, but it
Well,
right
then
now
you've
is
got
very
the runners up.
obvious.
Any of the runners up could potentially get created too.
Yeah,
So,
but what I wanted to do,
strategy wise, you should put some in there too, maybe if that's
yeah,
how
but
you're rolling it.
there were two pieces. To do the 2-in-1 is one option. The other was like we have from 200 to 1,000 matter in a scale to get from the first runner up to the fifth runner up. I would love to see anything over, and I think I said either 8 or 12 participants
Mm-hmm.
would be, you could create it, but you'd have to put in like 2,000 or 2,500 matter
Oh, okay.
on any of them. Why? Because it would now give us a much, in my opinion, a much better distribution, where people would say, okay, it's not going to be so heavily pushed to the top. And the reason is there might be a layer that you would commit lore to, but you haven't because you know it doesn't have any chance of winning. So this would force you to decide, is this really a good layer or not, even though it's
It
way
is
down
kind of
there.
intimidating sometimes whenever you want to propose a layer and get it up there, and you have all of these layer proposals, and you're just way down at the bottom. You're like, there's no point,
Yeah,
that kind
yeah.
of thing. So
And
that
it's
would bring some more interest to it.
and for people who are wanting to participate in all these various communities, it's interesting because you would have this reason to really evaluate all of them and not just focus on the top 10.
To see, and that's important too, because you can get an idea of, so the proposer or proposers with their write-up to see what direction they want to take it, what their plans are, if you think that that's going to work or not,
Yeah.
um,
Right.
yeah, reading
Right.
into those.
Oh, and something else we should bring in is, and there's one case that's probably coming up this coming LCP, is what I would consider the adding smart contracts, and whether it's across the board generically, or in this case, in my opinion, I think the first pass would be tying a smart contract to a tag. So something like the NSFW tag, something like the abuse tag, any of the tags that are, site-wide that would have some meaning to them, that if it gets marked that way, and if the layer is not an NSFW appropriate layer, then it gets hidden, and that anybody who wants to could still click on it and look at it, and therefore evaluate, is this really NSFW or not? And once it hits that, then based upon the rules of the layer, it would be, out, because we don't allow that here. So it would allow the consensus to happen inside of this hidden window, and then it could be, effectively automatically removed.
I'd also thought of, and at least you could use that same system, but I'd also thought of just at least applying it maybe to Apple, because they're super finicky about not safe for work material on their apps and things like that. So like if you could make it to where, okay, you can see it if you've opted in or whatever. If you've subscribed to that layer, you can see it on desktop, but it's just not available in the app. That's
right.
And just to keep it like some effort to segregate certain communities that can be wholly offensive to, people that weren't expecting it, that just downloaded an app and like, oh, what's all this, that kind of
and it is, behind, you'd have to subscribe to it to see it anyway, but it's still the issue that we don't know how Apple will react to it. We don't know a few other things, and we had not prioritized. In fact, I think that having DMs and chat is radically more important than that right now. I think that having anonymous posting is more important than that now.
I do too, and it comes up, and maybe this is a little too philosophical or something, but like there's features that I think are just leaps and bounds more important than something like making sure that this one thing that does exist will still show up to you if you're on desktop, but won't in the app or something like that. But those are things that will slow us down to where we will run into like,
I mean,
it's this balancing act of, okay,
right now,
should we spend time on it now so that we don't run into it, or should we, whatever.
And I'll tell you, right now, as an example, I was talking to someone who is wanting to integrate something into Den, and in that conversation, it brought up various things that I haven't had to think about since we were largely focused on Telegram with Dragon Chain, right? That when we were heavily focused on Telegram, we had to have 24/7 admins, and at first it was very expensive. Then we found some better ways to do it. Then we did community, but it's especially during the bull run in 2018. That was hellish. You would have the craziest stuff in the world happen in those forums, and if you didn't have an admin, it would have been massive trouble. So this person, he's like, oh well, we have moderators, and they pay for moderators. I'm like, oh yeah. It's like on Den, we don't have moderators, and you think about how different that is. It's a pretty radical departure.
Well, we do. We just change how we pay for it.
Yeah, totally. It's built into the system where the users they don't have to moderate, but if they do, then they get paid, right? So it's a really and the great thing too is that even with those systems, you can't tell how much to pay someone. You have to say, well, Jim isn't, he's not doing that great, not as good as Angie. So he's like, how do I pay them different with this? It's like, I don't have to touch it. I know that they're doing what they need to do. And it's based upon how often they come in, how quickly they react to stuff, how correct they are. It's amazing. And we don't want to get into a situation where we've had people in the past who wanted controls, even though there were already controls for the layer owners to ban people or to do various other things. We don't want to end up with a situation where, okay, now we have to budget time and or money just to moderate because we added a layer that might have, it might be just a little bit more to manage. So
there was a post put out either in Den or Den.Gov from the official account saying that we weren't going to do that layer until we had the tools to properly do it, right?
Yeah, right. I believe so.
I did read that. I just don't. I don't have it handy.
And that will be on the list of the priorities. So if it gets up to the the heavy end of the priorities, then I just don't know how, and we probably need to talk about it before the LCP announcement goes out. I don't know how to, to let people know appropriately. As of right now, we won't be able to turn that layer on. If we'd still create it, a lot would be distributed, but it wouldn't be turned on until
You mean if
those.
it wins next month or something, because
Yeah,
it's up there pretty high?
yeah,
I think that um, it's a situation where we're still building those tools out, and
yeah.
so maybe if it wins, it maybe we should. I don't know. If it wins, maybe it should just win, and then we don't create it until we have the tools,
Oh yeah, I think
just
that's
on the
that's
back
what I would
burner.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would still have the lot. It would be created, but it wouldn't be turned on, right?
Yeah.
And then once we integrate the tools, then turn it
Yeah,
on.
and then you don't have to do anything weird, and you don't have to like
Yeah,
break from what governance decisions have been in the past, or make a new decision for it. You just,
yep,
you don't have the capability to do it right, so we'll wait for that. I think that's very fair,
yeah, yep.
and I would be
Okay.
interested in seeing how that turns out with like certain creators. And too, another question was about private layers and invite-only layers and things like that. We have private layers already,
Yep.
so I can see that being, when other platforms, it's interesting, right? Because other platforms will shut down, and I'll always think like, how could we facilitate that on Den or whatever? And one of them was like the OnlyFans one, and I was like, okay, how would we? That was when I realized we didn't have the right tools for that content yet. I guess was like,
Yeah.
how would we do that? It was like, oh yeah, we got to build out for that, I guess.
Yeah.
So
And with the private layer, you might be able to do that more readily because you would own the layer. However you want it. If you have multiple people that are working it or whatever, they would own the layer, but um, nobody
what
else
I
could
could.
see it
Mhm.
unless you actually added them. Like
What I could
so.
totally see though is, similar to a private Discord with NFT artists and things like that. Once we have chat and DM and all of that stuff in, and maybe we integrate some sort of minting feature in Den to where you can at least, like, I know people are putting watermarks and stuff all the time, or making one certain pixel, a certain specific shade to make sure
Oh
that they
yeah.
can track, who they sold this to, so that they can see, whatever. There's got to be a way cleaner way of doing all of that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We've not for Den, but for other projects, we've designed and built a couple of things that relate. But it would be something where ideally uh, every single subscriber, let's say, would have something that would have a unique mark in it, so you would know if I don't know if that's what you mean or not, but
Well, no, yeah, it is. It's like just, creators who want to make sure that they don't keep selling to a client who is um, giving away their
oh,
work for free,
and
that
by
kind
the
of
way,
thing.
you can apply bounties to it as well. So
Oh,
that
really?
if
Interesting.
I found, let's say, a picture over here on a site that I would be rewarded for being the first to bring it in to report it, right?
Ah,
You could do stuff like that too. So it would be pretty
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, like if you violated, certain contractual obligations that you got auto booted from the private layer because of some provable on-chain data that you can objectively say, like, no, this is your account did this, now it's gone,
Yeah.
bye, that kind
Yep.
of thing.
Yep. And maybe even maybe even do. There are a lot of cool things you could try. So that's awesome.
Cool. That was good. That
All
was
right.
good brainstorming today. I enjoyed that.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
let's move into some reminders and see ourselves out. What do you think?
Yep.
So we got a bunch of shows every week. Today's my show day because I started another one that's not on here yet, but it will be. Thursdays at this time we have our weekly governance call for Den where we do this. There's a link in that show. There's a link at the top in the agenda to join the call. There's also a similar link on my Wednesday show if you want to join that call. Much more casual and open to questions and things like that. Usually anything that's on DIN. So even if it's not DIN related, you could go post something about it and then say, look, it's DIN related now because I posted about it. Let's talk about it. We also do World Blockchain Roundtable on Thursdays. If you didn't catch it this week, we did topic. The topic was journalism, which is real hot right now. So it was timely and topical. So that was a good one to do this week. I enjoyed it. What else? Tuesdays there's Super Happy Dragon Lucky where Joe puts out Dragon Chain and Den.Social updates, as well as a few times a week does the top AMAs, and you're still doing once a month a full AMA, right? Or you're not?
Yeah, we do up until the end of the hour for the very first week in a month. So the next show,
first one of the month. Okay.
Every other one we do 3 questions.
Gotcha. So go to find all of those and put in some questions and throw some content in there for us to talk about. This one's in the Den governance layer, Coffee's in the Den layer, Super Happy's in the Dragon Chain layer, World Blockchain's in the World Blockchain layer. That's where you find them. So there's your reminders. How about that? Oh, and there's World Blockchain merch now, which I've got to go get some. So I think that's cool. Updates. There's a bunch of merch here. I'm not going to sit here and show them all off. That would take forever. But I got hats and I got different colors and mugs and all that. So that'll be great.
I did get by the way, the embroidered hoodie of the Den is pretty nice. So
I got the metal JoJo one for my wife.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's right here.
Yeah. Nice. I wore that. I wore the black on black of the metal JoJo yesterday.
The black metal JoJo right here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. You can get the black on black where you can only see the N and the eyes. You can kind of see it if you get in the right light.
Okay.
It's crazy. It's pretty cool.
All right. So that's our governance call today. We'll see everybody on the next one or at those shows we talked about. Other than that, thanks again, Joe. It's always great picking your brain. I love to do it.
I'm hoping I can make it onto the coffee show because every time I watch it, it's like, oh, I wish you knew this, right? So I'll write it down and tell you later.
There's always like, oh, let me do a demo, and I'll even say like, I'm gonna forget something, and then I'll do a better one later. So
but it's always good though because it's always like you get to the right subjects and you get the gist every time. So I mean,
there was great really conversation in the last episode too. In the replies, there was some good talk there. So keep on keeping on.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All right, that's all I got. I'll see you later. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best. Adaptable, raw capital, label radical yet rational. A tactical approach is palpable if this animal is fallible. But that conclusion is laughable, so with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.